Welcome to the lab. Mark Savant here. One of the reasons that I love podcasting is the ability to absorb great information from amazing people. Some of the people I've talked with, Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Zachary Babcock, these are the types of people I would never have access to without a podcast. And the After Hours Entrepreneur is over 100 episodes, over 150 episodes now. We've been in syndication for over a year. And I've learned so much. I've had so many great people on the podcast. And so today, I want to give you a backstage pass. Me and the team have broken down some of the top moments, some of our favorite guests and the favorite insights that have really helped me and the digital agency grow to the next level. And I think that these tools are going to help you too. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you a backstage pass or a front stage pass to some of my favorite moments on the show. And we're starting out with none other than John Lee Dumas. He's the host of Entrepreneur on Fire. Millions of episodes are downloaded every single month. He's created a 7-figure business off the back of his podcast. Really amazing stuff. And today, John Lee Dumas is going to explain how you can differentiate yourself and separate yourself from being just an average podcaster into an excellent podcaster. Let's see what JLD has to say. What separates an average podcast from an excellent podcast? How can we stand out?
First off, an average podcast may as well be a horrible podcast, because if you're average these days, like, you're not going to generate an audience. You're not going to create a podcast that is meaningful just because it is a saturated marketplace. But if you want to make your dent in the world, to have an impact, to share that voice and that message and that mission with the world, you've got to create a podcast that solves a specific problem, that provides a real solution to an actual struggle. You've heard it before. The riches are in the niches. It is not different for podcasting. Like launching another podcast to interview entrepreneurs, it's not going to work. But if you launch a podcast that is specifically to serve vegans who at the same time love yoga, the Yogi Vegan is going to work, because you are going to find your tribe. You are going to be able to fill a void that's not currently being filled in the podcast market space. So that's what's going to separate an average podcast, which will fail, from a great podcast that will win.
I'll tell you what, I love John's perspective. And this is something that I think I wish I would have learned sooner. Not the riches are in the niches, although that is a great tagline, but the idea of a great podcast solves a specific problem for a specific person or a specific demographic, a specific psychographic. This is the hard stuff, right? It's pretty easy to get on a mic and just start talking, but what's really difficult is to identify who you speak to and how you serve them. So I just want to just highlight what JLD just said here. If you learn nothing from today's episode, just remember that. Solving specific problems for specific people. Okay, the next guest I want to highlight here is none other than Jasmine Starr. I got to say, Jasmine was one of the guests that came on that really influenced me in a positive way. And one of the things that we talked about in our episode was how to get engagement from your podcast audience. I don't know about you, but it can sometimes be really difficult to get your listeners to actually convert into someone that's actually going to send you an email or engage with you on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever you live. But Jasmine Starr is going to break down a really specific strategy in a really specific way, a really specific call to action that's going to help you get more engagement. Let's check out what Jasmine has to say. What are some ways that we can actually engage with our audience and get that direct feedback from them, Jasmine? What are you doing?
Well, the podcast is built that way. It doesn't feel that way. No, Mark, it is that way. Podcasts are unidirectional. Now, there are great people just like you who make it feel like a conversation and make it feel like people, listeners, are eavesdropping in on a conversation between two people. But I don't believe that conversations are existing on podcasts. I believe that the conversations are existing outside the podcast, but the podcast is a conduit of trust and reliability. If then that becomes the case, our call to action, our CTA, which listeners will hear again and again, is we want somebody to do one thing. We want people to take one action at the end of every single podcast. So at the end of every single show, you will hear me ask somebody to Send me a DM. Sometimes inside of the podcast, like I'll bake code words. Like I had an episode, strangely enough, I didn't actually think it was going to do all that well, but it was like the top 3 things you should be doing in 2021 to market your business. And I baked in there somewhere on like the 3/4 mark, a code word. And I was like, if you made it to this point in this podcast, send me this code word on Instagram. And it's so funny that this podcast dropped in January, months ago, and then all of a sudden I'm still getting the code word, which has actually been an unexpected benefit of understanding the long tail of a good podcast episode, that people can still be listening months after the fact, sending in the code word. So when somebody sends in a code word, it appears as a DM. If I would have said, hey, send me a DM, some people would probably not do it because they're like, what do I say? When you have a silly code word, and I'm not going to share the code word because I want people to listen. Only the legit listeners will know the code words. Oftentimes I'll make references to like Beyonce. I was like, if you love Beyonce, send me a Beyonce GIF. And all of a sudden, one morning, I totally forgot that I had that as a CTA, and I had all these Beyonce gifts, and I was like, my day is made. Like the queen herself is showing up on Instagram. But the thing was, it's not just that point of connection. It's the fact that I will respond. Now, the minute that they went from podcast listener to casual, I might send her a gift, to I show up and send somebody a message, they're like, oh, snap. We just got real deep in a matter of seconds. And sometimes, very often on podcasts, you'll have the CTA is to sign up for a free resource, because then what happens? They get an immediate email, and then every single week I'm dropping in their inbox with a little bit of a love bomb. Not a sales pitch, not a funnel. It's what are you doing to take action? That is how we're building trust and building those communications, two-way communication.
I'll tell you what, when you can get someone as accomplished as Jasmine with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of fans and followers, really impressive. And I just want to give her a shout out for this engagement method, because after this episode was completed, she shared it with her audience on her podcast, The Jasmine Star Show. And what was really cool was after executing this method and sharing it with her audience, my DMs on Instagram started blowing up. Dozens and dozens and dozens of messages. It allowed me to meet more people, bring more people into my atmosphere, listen to my show. Jasmine, you are a rock star. And listen, if you can get Jasmine on your show, I strongly recommend it. I love the personality. I love this engagement method. Try it for yourself. Let me know how it goes. And you know what? Go ahead and DM me on Instagram at @MarkSavantMedia. I want to know how it works for you. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. All right? Love you. So the next guest I want to highlight is Hala Taha. She hosts the Young and Profiting podcast. It's the #1 educational podcast on iTunes. And I love Hala. She's amazing. She's an expert networker. And one of the things that she really helped me to clear up and improve upon was my process for bringing in new guests. I know there's a dream guest that you're trying to get on your show that's going to provide massive value for you and your audience. Hard to land this person. But Hala's going to break down her exact strategy and her exact funnel and how she leverages LinkedIn to bring on amazing guests. So let's listen to what Hala has to say. And Hala's amazing. Hundreds of thousands of followers, both on LinkedIn, on her podcast, The Young and Profiting. Anyway, I digress. Hala's amazing. Let's get into what she has to say on how to book better guests. What's your most effective platform for finding new guests for your show?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn and email are the two main ways. Because I have such an impressive following on LinkedIn, it gives me a lot of leverage. And so typically what I do is I'll send an invite connect and I'll say, hey, what's going on? I have a top podcast, #1. I've had Matthew McConaughey on, Robert Greene, and I have 94,000 followers on LinkedIn. I'd love to give you more details. Like, please accept if you want to learn more. Then usually, hopefully they accept. And then I go into my pitch and I ask them on the show. And for a long time, especially there was a while where my presence on LinkedIn was much bigger than my actual podcast because it's very hard, as you know, to convert people from social media to your podcast. So for a while, it was like smokes and mirrors. My podcast seemed huge, but like in reality, I had like 4,000 downloads a month, and which is good, but it's not like now, right? And so, it took me a while to kind of close that gap. And for me, LinkedIn was a main way to get guests at that point. So another way that I get guests is through email campaigns, and typically they're email automation campaigns or drip campaigns. So what that means is that it's a multi-step message. And so the first email will sometimes have a blank subject line, or it will just say like appropriate person with a question mark. And basically it's a very casual email that kind of goes straight to the point. My name is Hala. I have a #1 podcast. I get, 150,000 downloads a month. I've had Matthew McConaughey, blah, blah, blah. I take a screenshot of my stats and maybe like a viral post that recently went viral. I love doing screenshots in the emails. It's super effective to just kind of give that social proof, especially if it has like a timestamp, like it was last week, or like I'm trending today on Apple. And then I just say, are you the right person? And thank you so much. Really appreciate your help. Super sweet, casual, short email. These people usually respond within like the first hour after getting this message. I don't know what it is. It's like psychology. They feel obligated to tell me if they're the right person or not. And so they respond back and they say, either, yes, I am the right person, and can you give me XYZ details or fill out this form, or where's the stuff to book? Or they'll say, no, I'm so sorry, I left the company, but talk to Joe, and here's Joe on CC, So I usually always get filtered to the right person, and then we can take it from there. So those are my two main ways of getting guests right now.
I got to say, I love this method, and I love the way that she kind of sets up her funnel, getting someone's interest all the way to booking them on the show. Now, you might say to me, Mark, well, that's easy for Hala to say. She has tens of thousands of followers, probably hundreds of thousands of followers at this point. Super popular. It's really easy to get great guests on your show when you have all these downloads. But listen, the After Hours Entrepreneur is only a year old, and look at all these great guests that I've had. Anyway, I digress. The key here is recognizing, understanding what makes you different, recognizing and understanding why someone would actually want to come on your show, want to come on your podcast. So you might not have the same amount of followers that Hala has, but maybe you have a strong, engaged audience that's super niched and super relevant to the guest you're bringing on. Whatever it is, really highlight what makes you special, what makes your podcast special, and why this guest should really come on your podcast because it's for their own good. Okay, now that we've talked about how to get great guests on your show, I want to share a clip from Sean Anthony. Sean Anthony is the host of School's Over, Now What? I love Sean. Great dude, has a great energy. And one of the things that's really impressed me about Sean is his ability to build community. And he's very prolific on Clubhouse. He has a very large club on Clubhouse. I think something like 40,000 followers on his club as of Q3 of 2021. But Sean's great. And I attribute a lot of his success to the importance that Sean puts on physically visiting guests. And I know in an age of a pandemic, that can be really difficult to do, but he sat down with people like Ed Milet and just some of the best creators, some of the best businessmen on earth. So I want to hear from Sean. I want to share this excerpt from him that really highlights why traveling and meeting with guests in person can really improve the quality of your show. Let's take a listen. Traveling is tough. So I want to tell me, does that shift the way that you actually reach out to these guests? So you get Ed Milet on your radar, like you've got his attention. When do you pepper in, hey, I'll travel to you? Is that at the beginning, at the end? How do you make that happen?
You gotta let them know, man. And I'm telling you so crazy about it. I haven't talked about this, but the moment you tell them you about to do that, they realize how serious you are. And then when you actually show up, they feel the vibe and they feel the aura. Like, I think about it right now, like when I got in my let, and it was like, all right, let's do this, let's make it happen. A lot of people kept tagging us. Before they kept tagging us, now that I think about it out loud, I had this guy named Chris Drama Path on my show. He's the CEO of Young and Reckless. He was doing this podcast called Short Story Long. He now does like group chat in his podcast. And after the podcast, Drama was like, yo, and guys, he's always on MTV with Rob and Big back in the day. He's like, yo, Sean, there's this big guy that you should get on your show. He doesn't look friendly, but I promise you got to get him on the show. I'm like, man, who are you talking about, man? He said, Ed Milet. And so then I started doing my research. I'm like, yo, he got the #1 business podcast on the planet. He's worth like $400 million plus, no debt. At least that's what the internet tells you. I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe it'll happen. And my tribe, my audience kept tagging, Ed Milet and us together as like the top 5 favorite podcasts. And Ed reshared a post I made. So I shared it on my Instagram in a story. And I said, oh, that's crazy. It'll be cool for it to happen. he sent me a DM and said, let's do it. And when he said that, I said, all right, let's go. Let's make it happen. And at that point, I knew if I wanted to fly to somebody, one, could this change my brand? Could this elevate my brand? Could this put me in front of somebody that's going to really be able to, give me the thought process that could change how I even think? And he was one of those people. And he came highly recommended. So I said, all right, let's do it. So he gave, he gave me the date, and I responded back and I said, I want to fly to you. And he gave me his address, and the rest is history.
I'll tell you what, I love what Sean's doing. I love this clip. And frankly, it's been really hard for me to travel recently. 2 kids, pandemic, married, running multiple businesses. It's been tough. But I think going into 2022, I am going to start to put more of an emphasis on travel. There are definitely some great guests that I want to sit down and connect with and learn from, learn together, right? You and me, we're going to learn together from these amazing creators and business owners, but it's on the to-do list. And I think that Sean has officially evangelized enough and brought me to what he's saying. So Sean Anthony, school's over. Now what? Thanks for sharing the good word. Okay. The next guest I want to highlight is Zachary Babcock. He hosts the Underdog Empowerment Podcast, hundreds of thousands of downloads, probably millions of downloads at this point. I'd be surprised if he's not. Zach is someone I learned a lot from, and not just from this episode, but the way that I listen to his show, the way that it's structured, the way his intros work, the way that he talks to guests, the way that he's really considerate of who he's speaking to and the problem that he solves. He's just a really, really, he's really a master at building a story, building a narrative, building an emotional connection with his fans and his audience. So I cannot wait to share this clip from Zachary Babcock today. He's going to explain to us how you should actually be engaging with people on social media and how you can bring your social media following to actually listen to your podcast, to actually leave reviews on your podcast. Because I'll tell you what most people do on social media when they reach out and message you or message me, it's completely wrong. It's a turnoff. It does not work. Zach is going to explain how he built his show, the Underdog Empowerment Podcast, into this hugely successful show that's allowed and given him a lot of freedom, time freedom, money freedom. Great guy, Zachary Babcock. Let's listen to what he says about how to engage your followers on social media and make it actually count. Let's take a look. So I want to go back a little bit. You also dropped some 4 quick knowledge bombs on how to get ranked, how to get top ranked. And one of the big things, one of the best ways to get your podcast ranked is to get reviews. So let's get down and dirty and gritty. How do you get people to drive reviews? Because it can be tricky, it can be difficult to get those reviews. How do you execute on that?
Yeah, dude. I'm just not lazy like most people. I will work and grind, and that's how we teach in our system. It's not there's no magical wand, no magical formula. But most people, dude. All right, and here's the deal too. A lot of these podcast marketing consultants talk about how they can get you ranked, but they get you ranked for a short period of time. You drop out. We keep you there, but and you stay consistently in the top 200. But here it is, man. Most people, though, they want to live, what's the word I'm looking for? Instant gratification. Yeah. They want instant gratification. And look, that's cool if you want to move fast, but there's no shortcut around developing true skills and becoming a master at it, all right? And so if you think about, we're trying to get people to leave you a review, a lot of people just try and they'll put a post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, like, hey, blah, blah, my podcast live, please go leave a review and subscribe and blah, blah, blah. And nobody does it because think about it. Nobody's coming to Facebook or Instagram to check out your podcast. They're coming in there to socialize. It's social media. And so on top of that, it's a post. It's a general for everybody. It's nothing specific, nothing personal about it. So if you slide into the DM and do it, you're going to have a way better chance. Now, where people mess up in the DM is they come in the DM and they don't talk to people online how they would talk to them offline. And what I mean by that, like, let's say, Mark, that we went to the same school. All right, but we didn't really know each other, but we went to the same school and knew of each other, and we're at this party, right? And if I run up to you, I'm like, Mark, dude, I got a new podcast here. Here's, check it out. Go write a link, blah, blah, blah. You'd probably punch me in the face if I did that. You know what I'm saying? But if I come up and I'm like, yo, what's up, man, or whatever, and I'm having a conversation, a dialogue, a back and forth, I'm not copy pasting some message with some links in there telling you go do something, you'd probably be more open to it. So the exact script that I use is, hey man, I got a huge favor to ask. And then I wait for them to respond. They respond. Sometimes they'll be like, yeah, sure. What's up? Shoot. Because everybody's curious. What's the favor? And sometimes they'll be funny, be like, oh shit, what do you want now? Or whatever, joking around, acting like you're asking for money or something. That's cool too. But then I'll respond, hey, can you subscribe to my podcast and write a 5-star review if I send you the link? Really important to say it just like that, because if you say it just like that, you're covering all 4 metrics. If they subscribe, it automatically starts downloading. And if you say write a 5-star review, technically you don't have to. This is a long-winded answer. Is that okay?
Yeah. This is great. This is gold, brother.
Sorry, dude. Because when I interview people and like sometimes you ask them a question, they'll start talking for like 20 minutes. You're like, dude, we're trying to have a conversation here. You know what I'm saying? But you don't have to ask for a 5-star review, because if they leave you a review, they have to leave a rating. But I've had a client literally get somebody to write them a testimonial or a review, and it was an awesome written review, but they thought 1 star was better than 5 stars and give them a 1 star. So you might want to throw that verbiage in there just so they know it's 5 stars, what you're aiming for. And then finally, the third piece of that is if I send you a link, you're saying, if I do this, will you do that? It's just being respectful, having a respectful conversation. You've now given them 2 chances to either not respond or say no. You're not trying to shove a link down their throat. It's treating them online the same way you would offline. And so 90% of your answers after that, and this script right here, literally used it over 4,000 times, no exaggerations. I'm never going to say I perfected anything, because that means I can't get better, but it is definitely optimized. It evolved into what it is now after sending it out so many times. So 90% of the time, the answer is going to be, yeah, sure, no problem, send it, and boom. And I'll share the reply after that. But some other answers you might get are, yeah, I don't know how to leave a review though. And then in that case, I have a link of showing them how to leave a review on a desktop and a phone or whatever. Some people will say, I don't have an Apple account. Well, that's just part of the game. Unless you want to sit there and walk them through how to set up an Apple account, which will take up way too much time and people probably won't do it anyways. In that case, I'd be like, dude, I appreciate that you were going to leave me a review. However, you can't do it unless you have an Apple account, but you can check out the podcast on Spotify or Google. Hope you like the podcast. And thank you again for seriously, considering to leave me a review. Boom. And then you'll also get people that'll say, I never had nobody tell me no flat out. The best answer you'll get is, yeah, I'll leave a review after I listen to it and give you my honest opinion. That's what you want, because that person's going to actually take the time to sit and listen to your podcast, and they might actually become a loyal listener, and that's what you're looking for. So, yeah, if they're just like, yeah, sure, no problem, then it's this. Super simple. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and drop your link. Don't say anything else. Just thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. Here's a link. And there's psychology behind that. It comes straight out of the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. With our human need to stay consistent with what we commit to publicly, he gave this whole long story about this American prisoner war in that book and how it's crazy. You should go check out that book. But anyways, if we say we're going to do something publicly, most people are not scumbags and they want to do what they say they're going to do. And they just said they're going to leave us a review. So we say, thank you. I appreciate you taking your time to do this. You just reminded them that they had verbally agreed to go do it. And then you drop the link. And that's the last thing they see. And they're like, oh, I just said I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go leave the link. And that's it. Super simple. It's just like, hey, are you going to get out there and start messaging people or not? Or are you going to be lazy about it?
I got to say, I love the point that Zach makes about how if you walked up to someone at a party and just started saying, here's my podcast link, download it, you get punched in the face. Actually, that literally made me laugh. Yeah, Zach, super, super funny guy, super down to earth. And one of the things, again, that Zach does really well is he highlights his own individuality. He finds what makes me different from other people, what makes me interesting, and he's really the tip of the spear for his community. The Underdog Empowerment Podcast you can listen to, and it's definitely one that I'd recommend. Zach is really good at what he does. Okay, and last but certainly not least, I want to share an excerpt from my interview with Pat Flynn, and we're going to talk about how integral the podcast has been in developing relationships and building his business. Pat's another person that I've listened to a lot of, watched a lot of, very active on YouTube, and his podcast, Smart Passive Income, very big. I think he's got like 100 million downloads on his podcast. Really, really great guy. And actually, since this episode, I've had the chance to meet with him and collaborate on two different projects. So 3 projects in total. And again, I just want to highlight that having a great podcast is not just about getting millions of downloads. It's about solving problems for people, building know, like, and trust, and turning that into a way that you can A, make money, but B, help people. Help people in a powerful way, and it builds a huge and very powerful community behind it. But this is not done over a day. Anyway, I'm not going to steal Pat's thunder. I'm going to let Pat explain to you how podcasting has changed his life for the better. Let's listen in. I'm just curious. You've been in podcasting a long time. What role does podcasting play in that relationship development stage of your career now?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. My history with podcasting was very interesting. I started my show in July of 2010, and I only had time for one episode every other week, so a bi-weekly show. And I was blogging 3 times a week. That was my bread and butter, blogging. And I went to a conference a couple months after the podcast was launched. And at this conference, I found a number of people who knew who I was, and I started chatting with them. And all of them could not stop talking about the podcast, the stories I was telling in my podcast, and the things that they learned on the podcast. And I was like, well, what about the blog? I'm spending way more time there. I'm blogging 3 times a week. Like, is that cool? And they're like, yeah, but I mean, the podcast was really great. And when I think about it, I'm like, every time I get a piece of fan mail, it's always from a podcast listener. Every time I hear somebody say, I've been able to impact their lives, it's been because of, in fact, single episodes of the podcast that they've listened to. Not the blog post that's top 5 ways to get more traffic from Facebook, but the story I told in these podcasts. And because podcasts are very intimate, it's the best way to scale intimacy. Yes, as a creator, it's one-to-many, but to the listener, it's a one-on-one. And you consider that as the creator, and you start using words like you, because you listening to this or watching this right now can feel a little bit more connected to the people or the person that is hosting that show. And of course, if you can then combine that intimacy with helping and providing value, and also speaking the same language that person can really resonate with, then that's when a person goes, oh my God, this is the person that I need to be following. This is the program that I want to get in. This is who I think all my friends should know about. That's where word of mouth really comes into play. It's everything to me. Without my podcast, I would definitely not be where I'm at today. And this is why I'm so adamant about teaching other people how to podcast, because it's definitely, even though numbers wise, it's still very early in the days of podcasting. There just crossed 1 million overall podcasts in April of 2020. Compare that to 500 million active blogs or 43 million active YouTube channels. We are still in the early days. And so it's those who are getting on now, who are developing those relationships, who have people's attention for much longer than a video or a blog post. Those are the ones who are going to win, because those people become super fans who will follow you and support you no matter what happens with technology later. This is what we're building, is what I like to call business insurance, is those relationships that you build.
I'll tell you what, podcasting has really changed my life. And as you can see from these highlights, it's bringing more and more people into my atmosphere, and it can absolutely work for you too. I want you to go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, share this with someone that could really, really get some value from today's episode. And another thing I just want to highlight is, as I started to go back and listen to these top moments, these old podcasts, it really struck me how far I've grown as a creator, as a business owner, as a father, as a friend, as a family member. And I think this is one of the things that people don't talk about enough when it comes to podcasting, is the skills that you're going to learn, the drive that you're going to develop, the connections you're going to foster. It's really life-changing in a lot of ways. And even if your podcast doesn't get a lot of downloads, the skills that you're going to pick up are, in my opinion, the most important skills that you can learn over the coming decade. And that's how to communicate with people digitally, how to build your digital network. If you are missing the mark on these 2 things, I honestly have no idea how you're going to be successful. I really don't. I have no idea, because we don't even know what the future holds as far as the types of jobs that are out there. But I can tell you what, human connection, human communication digitally it's the name of the game. It's going to be everything. So in the meantime, thanks for listening to After Hours Entrepreneur. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you here next time. Go out and create. Peace. Thanks for watching Mark Savant Media. Here we're going to help you create a better content in less time and turn that attention into income. If you love this video, you're going to love these videos here. Click the one. Me and my team specially selected this just for you. Click the link. Check out the video. I'll catch you here next time on Mark Savant Media. Peace.